If you're dealing with a pathological narcissist, then you are in a relationship that is going downhill because pathological narcissism is regressive. This means that this disorder, this dis-ease, or this type of dysregulation gets worse over time. So if you are in a narcissistic intimate relationship, for example, and let's say you're with this person for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, again, whatever that time period is, did that relationship get better over time or did it get worse? Because if you're on this channel, people, then you are in a dysfunctional relationship because that relationship just tanked, right? It is a failing stock. It went down like the Titanic because you cannot build with a pathological narcissist because they embody destructive energy. So it is important to understand that pathological narcissists age like milk. They curdle over time. They do not age like wine. They do not get better with time. So if you're looking for a tall glass of Pinot Noir or a nice glass of Merlot, understand that you won't find this in the third dimension. What you'll find in the third dimension is curdled milk. And you really do not want to drink that. Hence, it is important that if you're trying to get into healthy, blossoming, blooming, growing relationships with other individuals at a consciousness level, these individuals must be able to access the fourth dimension or higher. This means that these are individuals that are working on themselves. For example, if you have access to courage, then this person can be vulnerable. For example, let's say that I accidentally stepped on your shoe. I have to get the courage to apologize because if I am stuck in my pride and I am prideful and big-headed, then I won't want to apologize to you because you need to let go of pride to get to the level of courage. So when you're dealing with a pathological narcissist, you're dealing with someone that is rooted in their shame. So they have pathologically low self-esteem so low that they would probably have to look up to see it, and they are unable to move past their pride. And we're not talking about healthy pride here, like taking pride in your work, like confidence. This is not confidence. It is grandiosity. It is their false sense of superiority. It is egomania. So in their minds, they believe that they are perfect. They can do no wrong. So understand that if someone believes that they're perfect, well, they don't need to change. So what happens is pride cometh before the fall, and they fall right back down to shame, to go through another shame pride cycle. And this is where pathological narcissists have been stuck since their childhood years. They are in a shame pride cycle. They are stuck at the bottom of the consciousness ladder. We're talking about dregs at the bottom of the spiritual cup. And this is because they are not truly working on themselves. So they are running from their shame. And again, shame is an emotion that is targeted at the self. So shame is linked to your self-esteem and your self-confidence. So what happens is they are running from their shame. So then the question that you're going to ask is, well, where is this shame coming from? So there are many different things that can cause shame. So this could be neglect, so emotional neglect, physical neglect, etc. It could be abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, etc. So what happens is if someone goes through trauma, and trauma is anything that pushes the spirit down into shame, right? If you do not address this shame, then it metastasizes. It gets worse. It gets malignant. It gets cancerous. So pathological narcissists are just sweeping their shame under the rug. And if you're not dealing with a problem, well, it grows. So they are running from their shame, running from these things that trigger their low self-esteem instead of really working on it, all right? And then they get to pride, and again, pride cometh before the fall, and they fall right back down to shame. And this is the cycle that they have been in for years, long before you came into the picture. So understand that our physical growth is the default setting of our being. At our core, we are spirit. We are spiritual beings having a human or a physical experience. We are not our bodies. We have a body. For example, in the case of an amputee, and let's say the person's name is George, well, George may lose a limb, but George doesn't lose himself because George is not the limb. George has lost a limb. George is the spirit or the consciousness or the life force that is operating the physical body. In another scenario, let's say we are at a funeral and George's body is in the casket. Well, that exactly it is. George's body is in the casket because George, the life force, George, the spirit, has now moved on to another dimension because energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just transformed. So when George was walking around on this planet, well, George was an embodied spirit. And now after the physical passing, then George is a disembodied spirit. The spirit moves on to another dimension. We are spirit at our core, and we have access to tools or faculties, namely our mind power, our willpower, and our emotions. Similarly, we are not the mind, and the mind is not the brain. The brain is a physical organ that is a part of the physical body. Our mind is not physical. You cannot touch the mind, but you know that you have a mind. Or we can also know that someone has lost their mind because, again, we are not the mind. Our minds are tools, and we use our minds to generate ideas. We use the mind to brainstorm and so on. The mind is a tool that we use to make decisions. Similarly, we're not our emotions. We have emotions. You feel anger. You feel courage. You feel peace. But again, we are not the emotions itself. Emotions are energy in motion. And that is why if someone is very angry and you see them, well, you'll pick up on the vibration. You'll pick up on that emotional energy that is being transmitted because we are electromagnetic beings. And we're also not the will. We have a will. And you can think about your willpower like a disciplined muscle. So if you work on that muscle, then it gets stronger. So you are going to be highly disciplined. And if you don't really work on your will, you will see where you're very impulsive and or compulsive. But again, at our core, we are spirit. Now here is the problem. At the pathological narcissist core, they are not really the human spirit anymore because they abandoned their spirits in childhood. This is what you call dissociation or self-abandonment. So they abandon the spirit, they abandon the true self for a false self. And the false self is what you call the ego or the mask. And the ego is what you probably fell in love with. The ego was what you were interacting with. That is their mask. Very similar to how Chucky wears a good guy mask to hide his deep-seated inner anger and rage and evil. The true spirit of Chucky is a very dark, malevolent spirit. And this really is the same when it comes to pathological narcissists. So understand that whoever you met on day 0 does not exist. They were wearing a mask because you are dealing with the Anna Delveys of the world. You are dealing with a total fake. So the narcissist comes around you and you like hip hop and R&B music. Well, you will see where all of a sudden the narcissist likes hip hop and R&B music. If the pathological narcissist comes around me and I like country music, well, they all of a sudden are going to like country music. And they will mimic you and they will mirror you so that you believe that they are like you. They are going to become a country music expert. You're going to hear the pathological narcissist say, well, dip me in some vinegar and call me a pickle. Because they are going to mirror you so that you believe that they are like you. But again, you are dealing with a mask. You are dealing with the figment of a child's imagination that now exists inside of an adult's body. That is the ego. Pathological narcissists at their core are not the human spirit people. They believe that they are the ego. They believe that they are the mask and understand that the ego is a mind-made construct. It is the figment of a child's imagination now existing inside of an adult's body. So if pathological narcissists believe that they are the ego and they believe that they are the mask and the ego is a mind-made construct, then pathological narcissists believe that they are the mind. And if someone believes that they are the mind, then they are losing their minds.